Follow me, please.
Though released 50 years ago, the film still makes audiences roar with laughter thanks to its quirky charm and masterful humour. The film revolves around the bizarre adventure of Dr. Frederick Frankenstein as he daringly revives a monster, leading to a chain of chaotic events that are both horrifying and comical. It may sound humorous, but did you know that behind that facade lie strange secrets that no one in the film crew dared to mention? A funeral actually took place on the film set. A storm swept through and nearly submerged everything. Even just because of a single line, the film faced the risk of being completely banned for young audiences. That is not the whole truth. The video will reveal what Young Frankenstein intentionally hid for so many years. 1. The quirky work that surpassed Hollywood blockbusters. With a budget of less than $3 million USD, Young Frankenstein looked like a new recruit in a forest of blockbusters. But when it hit theaters, it swept away all doubts, earning over $80 million USD, nearly 27 times its initial capital. What's more shocking? The film had almost no major promotion. No billboards across the city, no relentless trailers on television. The only thing that drew audiences to the theaters was word of mouth, a black and white film, both quirky and intelligent, that made everyone who watched it invite their friends to see it next. As a result, it surpassed many grand blockbusters of the same year, proving that being different not only survives, but wins resoundingly. However, behind the box office glory was a fierce confrontation right from the film's title. 2. The life and death battle to keep the film title. The film had just been completed. Before the celebration could begin, shocking news from the studio struck. Young Frankenstein would be renamed Frankenstein Returns, or worse, Son of Frankenstein, the comedy. The reason? It sounds more marketable, and Gene Wilder was stunned. To him, changing the title was like erasing the film's soul. Without saying much, Wilder coldly declared, "Change the name, I quit the film." It was not a joke. The studio knew well that losing the star and co-writer at the last minute was like self-destructing the project. After a few tense days, they were forced to back down. And so, the name Young Frankenstein survived and went on to become a legend. But keeping the name was just the beginning. The next step, they had to decide which scenes were worthy of existing on the screen and which would be mercilessly cut. 3. The crazy song and dance number that was almost cut. The stage lights blaze, the giant monster and Frankenstein sing and dance to Puttin on the Ritz. The audience roared with laughter. But the truth? This scene was once on the verge of being deleted. Mel Brooks read the script and decreed, "Too much, get rid of it." Gene Wilder got angry. This will be the scene the audience remembers for the rest of their lives. The confrontation was as tense as a guitar string. In the end, Brooks reluctantly agreed to a test shoot, and as soon as the camera stopped, he said only one thing: "Keep it, this is the best scene in the movie." But there was another shot that was just as good, which left an actor speechless when he saw himself on an altar. 4. The funeral on set that shocked the whole crew. The film was known for its quirky horror mixed with humour, so it was no surprise that the crew also played a creepy prank on the last day of shooting. It seemed everything for Young Frankenstein would end with a cut and a farewell hug. But no. When Gene Wilder and the actors walked onto the set, they were shocked to see flickering candles, black cloths draped over everything, and a coffin placed right in the middle of the floor. It turned out the entire crew had secretly set up a funeral for the film itself. Eulogies were read slowly, mourning the characters as if they had just passed away. Some people were silent, their hair standing on end. Others held back their laughter until their faces turned red. This was the kind of bizarre humour that the film crew had lived with for months. And that was just the opening act for the series of insane incidents that followed. 5. The monster's face. melted right on set. In Young Frankenstein, the monster is the central character given to Peter Boyle, an actor known for his patience and willingness to sacrifice for his roles. To transform, he had to wear a thick layer of latex and glue plastered from his forehead down to his neck. At first, everything was fine, but under the sweltering lights, the latex layer began to soften, then melt into patches, taking the fake scars with it. Through the lens, the monster looked like it was disintegrating while the camera was still rolling. The entire set was immediately in chaos. The makeup team rushed in, wiping away sweat while patching up the mask, trying to keep the monster's face from disappearing completely. If they were just a few minutes late, the entire expensive scene would have to be scrapped. And just as they breathed a sigh of relief, the next disaster was right in front of them. 6. The fake storm that nearly flooded the film set. To create the storm scene, the crew installed a system of water sprinklers, giant fans, and flashing lights to simulate lightning. Initially, everything worked according to plan. But after just a few minutes, the amount of water surged as if someone had accidentally turned on flood mode. Water poured down, the powerful fans blew foam everywhere. In an instant, the entire set was ankle-deep in water. Cameras, microphones, electrical cords, all were sinking under the water. A single electrical short would have been enough to turn the fake movie scene into a real disaster. The entire crew scrambled to move equipment to higher ground, cut off all power, and began a rescue operation that lasted until the next morning. Thinking they had weathered the storm, the next trouble came from a seemingly harmless line of dialogue. 7. A single line that almost got the film an R rating. In a key scene, the monster and Elizabeth have a dialogue full of innuendo. When the monster signals his desire to get close, Elizabeth exclaims, "Oh, what knockers?" And the monster replies, "Oh, thank you." A back and forth that made the audience laugh, but made the censorship board blush. According to them, this was a clear sexual reference, enough to push Young Frankenstein to an R rating, meaning children and teenagers would not be allowed to see it. This could cause box office revenue to plummet and ruin the goal of reaching a wide audience. Mel Brooks refused to lose. He brought the film print to argue 3 times, insisting that it was a harmless play on words, with absolutely no direct vulgar scenes. In the end, the film kept its PG rating, and right after that, he had to enter an even more intense battle to win back the very name Young Frankenstein. 8. 2 unruly stars that left the director helpless. On set, the script was almost just a suggestion. Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman constantly ad-libbed dialogue, changed their pacing, and added jokes without warning. Director Mel Brooks was initially furious, thinking they were disrupting the rhythm of the scenes. But when he reviewed the footage, Brooks was stunned. Those spontaneous changes didn't ruin the film, but turned them into comedic gold. It was that unruliness that created countless unexpected moments, making the audience burst out laughing because they couldn't predict what was next. That was something no script could ever write, and it contributed to making Young Frankenstein a truly weird work. 9. The weird film preserved as a national treasure. In 2003, nearly 3 decades after its release, Young Frankenstein was unexpectedly inducted into the National Film Registry, a place that only preserves works considered cultural, historical, or artistic treasures of the United States. In other words, the film is now protected like a statue or a constitution, unable to be forgotten. What's shocking is, this was originally a horror parody full of bizarre gags, not a serious masterpiece of the Oscar variety. But it was the combination of classic black and white style and bold, unconventional jokes that made it unique. And that uniqueness is what history wanted to preserve. Someone said that when he received the news, Mel Brooks just laughed. So now, Lincoln and I share a warehouse. But from that moment on, a film once considered reckless officially became a legacy. And this legacy was strong enough to take down even the blockbusters of its time. 10. Oscar-winning star unexpectedly burns his pants on screen. When all the roles had been cast, Gene Hackman, already an Oscar winner at the time, suddenly called Gene Wilder just to say, "I want to play a comedic role." No audition, no lengthy contract, just one phone call. As a result, Hackman appeared as a blind hermit in just one scene, but it was enough for audiences to remember forever. He pours wine for the monster, but pours it directly onto its sensitive area, causing it to catch fire and jump up. The entire scene was filmed in one day. Then Hackman disappeared from the set as if he had never been there. Some joked that this was the only cameo in film history that could burn both the screen and the audience's memory. And just as the laughter from this scene was dying down, Mel Brooks had to dive into another fierce battle to protect what he considered the film's lifeline. 11. The director's uncompromising stance on colour. Right from the contract signing, Mel Brooks stated bluntly, Young Frankenstein would only be shot in black and white. True to the style of 1930s horror films, the studio executives heard this and were on pins and needles. Audiences today don't want to watch colourless films anymore. Immediately, they offered an incentive, an increased budget, an expanded promotional campaign, if only Brooks would agree to shoot in colour. But he wouldn't budge. Brooks even looked the studio head straight in the eye and said, "Force me, and I'll quit the film immediately." In the end, the film was shot entirely in black and white, and this turned out to be a golden move. Young audiences found it novel, while older audiences found it familiar. The movie screen suddenly became a gateway back to the golden age of classic horror, and a giant joke was about to unfold. 12. Older audiences mistook it for a real horror film. Thanks to its classic grey tones, plus original lab equipment from Frankenstein, 1931, Young Frankenstein looked exactly like a lost installment of the series that had just been found. Quite a few older audience members went to the theatre expecting to enjoy a real horror film. They watched in silence until the first burst of laughter erupted. And from then on, the theatre turned into a dark comedy party, making even those who initially thought they had bought the wrong ticket unable to stop laughing. Brooks was well aware of this misunderstanding, but he never corrected it. Because for him, nothing was more fun than letting the audience realise on their own that they had been pranked. And the next prank, surprisingly, was for a horse. 13. The housekeeper's name that made horses scream. In Young Frankenstein, whenever someone uttered Frau Blücher, the horses in the courtyard would whinny loudly, yanking at their reins as if they had just seen a ghost. The audience thought this was just a strange, unexplained joke, but it turned out Mel Brooks had stolen it from his childhood. A woman in his neighbourhood, cold, scary, to the point that kids would shudder and run away just hearing her name. Brooks turned that memory into a mysterious effect. No one in the film explains it. The characters don't even seem to notice. But every time the whinny sounds, the theatre erupts in laughter. And at the centre of it all, the actress who played Frau Blücher, who made the set shake not because of the horses, but because of human laughter. 14. The actress who made the entire crew unable to stop laughing. Cloris Leachman didn't just play Frau Blücher, she inhabited it. Eyes wide, voice like a razor cutting through the air, every line delivered like a curse. The result, instead of being scared, the entire set burst out laughing like crazy. In one scene, the laughter erupted while the camera was still rolling, forcing Brooks to cleverly edit to hide the fact that the crew was clutching their stomachs in laughter behind the camera. And Cloris, she just kept acting nonchalantly, as if she didn't realise she had just taken down the entire crew with a single line. In the midst of that atmosphere, another character was about to enter, but this time, that person didn't appear through a noisy audition, but got straight into the film in a way no one expected. 15. A role chosen in secret. While other roles went through rounds of rigorous casting, the role of Inga was reserved without anyone on the crew knowing beforehand. Gene Wilder, both the lead actor and co-writer, whispered in Mel Brooks' ear, "Trust me, she's the one." No audition, no invitation. Just one time Terry Garr held the script, read a few lines in a half-innocent, half-mischievous voice. Brooks immediately sat up straight, looked at Wilder and nodded. At that moment, all other candidates were effectively eliminated without even knowing it. From a quiet decision, Garr's Inga walked straight into the history of cinematic comedy. But for the world of Inga and those other bizarre characters to feel real down to the last detail, Brooks needed another treasure, not a person, but something that had survived for 4 decades. 16. 40-year-old props brought back to life on film. When preparing to build Frankenstein's laboratory, Brooks flatly refused all newly manufactured props. He wanted the real thing, and only the real thing. After weeks of rummaging through studio warehouses, he found a treasure trove, the entire original equipment from Frankenstein, 1931. They were covered in dust, but when plugged in, the gears still turned, the light bulbs still flashed, and the Tesla coil still shot out crackling sparks. Without a cameo, he still signed his name on the film dozens of times. It's just that the audience didn't realize it right away. But if Brooks was as subtle as a phantom of sound, Marty Feldman chose to be blatantly disruptive right in front of millions of people. And no one could fault him. 18. The invisible joke that left millions of viewers baffled. The script clearly stated, Igor's hump is on the right. But Marty Feldman saw that as an invitation to break the rule. Today, the hump is on the left. Tomorrow, it disappears. The day after, it jumps back to its original spot as if it never left. Not a word of explanation. No one on the film crew asked. Feldman did it so subtly that the crew didn't even notice, as if they were in the presence of a magician. It wasn't until the film was released that sharp-eyed viewers were stunned. Wait, did the hump just switch sides? And then they started rewatching, slow-motioning, scrutinizing every frame, only to realize they had been teased from the very beginning. That joke wasn't in the script. It had no effect on the story, but it became Feldman's secret gift for those who love to dig up quirky details. And amidst all these tricks, there was a seemingly ordinary line, but it was rumored to be the inspiration for a legendary rock hit that once shook the entire music world. 19. The accidental line that may have spawned an immortal rock hit. Among the many quirky lines in Young Frankenstein, there is one so concise that anyone who heard it thought it was stage direction. Walk this way. Wilder said it in the scene entering the laboratory while imitating Igor's hunched walk. The film crew burst out laughing, but no one thought this would be something that would transcend the scope of the film. Rumour has it that during the week this scene was being filmed, members of Aerosmith visited the set as they were recording nearby. They witnessed Wilder's quirky walk and talk, and the whole group laughed so hard they had to imitate it. A few months later, a rock hit of the same name was released, becoming one of the most famous songs of the 70s. No one has confirmed this connection. Aerosmith remained silent. Brooks just smiled and said, "If it's true, I won't ask for royalties, but I'll take some concert tickets." It is this ambiguity that has allowed this story to live on as a legend, passed down by word of mouth for decades. And just as that small line suddenly stepped off the screen, another prop also escaped the fate of being stored away, to continue its acting career in real life. 20. The giant boots that continued to act in real life. When Young Frankenstein wrapped, hundreds of props were collected, inventoried and stored. But one item vanished. The monster's giant boots, nearly half a metre tall, so heavy that just a few steps would tire out a normal person. The taker, none other than Mel Brooks. He didn't hide it. At the premiere, Brooks appeared in a formal suit, but under his trouser cuffs were the monster's boots, clomping clomp clomp on the red carpet. The entire auditorium applauded as if they were watching a real-life post-credits scene. Rumour has it that those boots weren't kept in a prop closet, but right in Brooks' living room. Friends recounted that he would bring them out at every party, sometimes letting guests try them on as a party-starting ritual. One person swore they saw the boots even at a Christmas party when Brooks was playing, a 2-metre-tall Santa Claus. True to the spirit of Young Frankenstein, the cameras stopped, but the joke never did. Nearly half a century has passed, and Young Frankenstein still stands as a monument to the parody comedy genre, something that proved that being different can not only survive but can also dominate the box office. Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder together created a work that brought together all the elements. Black and white imagery, reminiscent of a golden age, witty jokes that made audiences roar with laughter, and even impromptu moments that the film crew themselves could not have anticipated. This is not just a film for entertainment, but also a lesson in daring creativity, daring to stick to your style, daring to break the rules, and daring to believe that the audience will stand by you, even when Hollywood doesn't have faith. From a project considered crazy, it has become a national legacy and an endless source of inspiration for countless generations of filmmakers. If you've seen Young Frankenstein, try watching it again, this time to spot every quirky detail hidden in every frame. And if you haven't seen it, congratulations! You are about to have an experience that is both intelligent and truly weird. Like this behind-the-scenes story? Then don't forget to like, share and subscribe so we can bring you more crazy but true stories from behind the scenes of cinema.